Moline High School. Welcome to your social emotional lesson for April 16th. We are going to review decision making and self-regulation. So again, we're going to review, we're going to watch video, and then we have an activity for today. Update for juniors and seniors. Prom is on May 10th at the Bend Expo Center in East Moline, and the theme is Great Gatsby. To bring a guest, you must fill out a guest form at the MAC. Those are already available. Tickets for the sale will be Tickets will be for sale on April 28th, $20 at the MAC and $25 at the door. New this year, students are asked to arrive by 9 p.m. for entrance. So now another update for all grades. I'm going to keep reminding you guys, remember to check your grade level Google Classroom for any announcements or information. We post lots of information in that area. We've been getting information about summer camps and other summer opportunities, or you can always go to the counseling page on the Moline High School website. So you'll go to molineschools.org and then our school and the counseling department. Okay, so a review of self-regulation. Self-regulation is the ability to stay in control of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in order to make good decisions. Self-regulation is super important because it gives us ways of coping with our emotions so we can find better ways of managing our frustration, sadness, and fear. Remember, we learned how the brain works so we can better understand our emotions turning into actions. So, remembering how the brain works, you hold up your hand, looking at your palm, this represents your brain. The wrist and the middle of the palm is the brainstem and the spinal cord. So if you put your thumb inside of your palm, this is your limbic system with the amygdala. Close your fingers and rest them around your thumb. This is the cortex, or our thinking brain. So you have the amygdala on the inside and your thinking brain wraps around it. When your amygdala is in control, so the emotional part of your brain is in control, we can say we flipped our lid, because when our emotions take over, it makes our thinking not work well. And we can say that our amygdala kind of hijacked our brain, or we can say we flipped our lid. We want to have our thinking brain in control so that we can have better control of our actions. On the next slide is going to be a video just to remind us about how all of this works. I'm going to turn off my camera for a moment and we're going to watch this video.
The human brain develops and connects from bottom to top. During adolescence, two parts of the brain undergoing development are the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is responsible for emotions, impulses, and instinctive behavior. It's part of the brain sometimes referred to as the emotional brain. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive functioning. Things like problem solving, decision making, planning, and the use of judgment. It helps us think through the consequences of our actions, inhibit behaviors, and allows us to focus on long-term goals. It is the part of the brain people often refer to as the thinking brain. Our prefrontal cortex is one of the last parts of the brain to fully develop. This usually happens by our mid-20s. The amygdala, on the other hand, develops well before the prefrontal cortex. So adolescence involves a period where these two parts of the brain aren't fully connected to one another. Because of this, a young person's decision-making and problem-solving abilities are more heavily driven by the amygdala, the emotional brain, rather than the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain. This is why adults can sometimes see young people's decisions as impulsive, poorly thought out, or driven by emotion. And whilst we know young people can accurately recognize and assess risk, they often place a higher value on a potential reward when weighed up against the potential risk. Although this might sound like a bad thing, this is actually a pivotal part of growing up. Through risk-taking and trying new things, young people are getting a chance to test their ideas and learn by trial and error. This is helpful in moving towards independence. It is how we as humans develop, learn, adapt, and grow.
Okay, we are going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so remember these three things. You can maintain good control if you use the thinking part of your brain to override the panic button in the emotional center of your brain. To get control of your feelings and calm down, stop and do something immediately, like some breathing exercises. Think about how you're feeling, say the problem and how you feel. This makes the thinking part of our brain stronger and stronger so we can make good decisions, so we can feel like we have, like we're the ones in control and that our emotions are not in control. It takes a lot of practice. And that's why it's usually easier for adults because we've had a longer time to practice how to control our emotions. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about, just a reminder, are all the self-regulation strategies that we talked about before to help us get in control. We have mindfulness, breathing exercises, grounding, and cognitive reframing. Cognitive reframing is a fancy way of talking about changing how you think. So, change your perspective, saying some positive self talk, and asking yourself questions. It's really just a way to like stop and think about what you're doing and talking kind of like your internal dialogue. Sometimes it can be external. You can talk to yourself while doing it. And then decision making. So, decision making is actually the process of making choices by identifying a decision, gathering information, and assessing the alternative resolutions. So, there's actually 5 steps, or you can think about it in 3 steps. But the longer process of decision making, especially for bigger decisions and really, big, tough decisions that are going to affect your life, is identifying the problem, analyzing the situation, brainstorming solutions, thinking about the ethical or any other part of what it's going to involve. So if you're trying to pick a college to go to, or you're trying to decide between staying home and going away to college, you want to think about the financial aspects, you want to think about family aspects. So not necessarily just ethical, but how it's going to affect your whole life. And then you evaluate and reflect. Another real simple way to think about decision making is stop, think, and choose, to not always rely on that emotional feeling. So here are your activity or activities for today. There's 2 documents in your Google Classroom. We have the mindfulness strategies for self-regulation. This is the exact same resource that I shared in the fall. If you can go over these mindfulness strategies, start incorporating 1 or 2 of them into your life, it will really help you control those emotions that are going on. And then another fun activity I found is a would you rather activity. I'm sure all of you have heard of a would you rather activity, but this is just decision making practice and discussion with either a partner, small groups, or a whole class. You can discuss some of these decision making ideas on the would you rather. You could even type out your answers on the document if you're watching this by yourself, if you want to start practicing making some decisions that way. All right, that's all I have for today, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I will see you in a couple weeks. Take care. Bye.